Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to speak. Before I get started, at the bottom here is a QR and a link to this slide deck if you want to, follow along or whatnot. So this is just some of my personal kind of observations, my perspective. I'm just a resident. It's been following this way too long now, and yeah, I was actually pretty neutral when it first came out, just trying to get more information about it, and kind of the further I dug, the darker it got. Well, it's this theme. It's a recurring theme. It's in the draft EA. It's in a lot of the previous presentations on this topic. That these are what I feel very selective truths and aggressive redirection, really, that to a very constrained narrative. And the story always goes back to, oh, poor us, we need the money, and the other side, hey, we have this great opportunity, we can provide affordable housing. And hey, that's fine. It's noble or whatever. But this whole thing, this proposal, it's much more than that. It's more complex, and I believe a lot more impacts than that. So kind of this sort of presentation is kind of about what's being shown at face value and sort of what we might expect, a reasonable outcome of some of this. So this is sort of just a summary of OSCA's updated EA and their differences. So sort of they're saying they're responding to the community concerns and they have these big four changes. Um, so yeah, I mean they did some changes since maybe we last heard. They're saying here they're going to reduce the unit size. Um, they're going to allocate more area for parking, but yet they have a lot of kind of stipulations of whether or not how much would be used, but they're allocating it. And the triangular parcel is not as commercial as it was originally proposed, but they're still including some, you know, enhancements or renovations in this 201H exemption for affordable housing. So at first, when it was commercial, I really thought it was overreach to kind of bundle other development into it, and this, I mean, it's less overreach. Um, anyway, that's what they're claiming is different. I kind of wanted to just reiterate what I feel is still the same. Let's see if I can do this. Still kept the option for lower road to have vehicles. So in the first bullet, contrary to a mailer that actually was sent out to local residents in April of last year, they stated that they're taking input from the community, and they stated in that flyer that they sent, Lower Road will no longer be used for ingress or egress. Well, in this updated draft EA, there's still this option. They're saying they could use Lower Road or maybe not. So it's um, for all they said that they took our input and that they said that they weren't going to use it, it's kind of back on the table. Uh, Still, these I face rhetoric to stay non-committal. So in this second bullet, you know, there's a claim that hey, this is conceptual and blah blah. It's all over, and it just makes it very difficult for us, as a community, the public, to really assess what is the scope and scale or what are potential impacts of the proposed action. Um, one example is above with the lower road, and there's many examples of this. The detention basins, it's like potential, and they could build this management stormwater system. Still, same for buildings, three-story density. So in the third bullet, it's the same. I mean, general like 288 one-bedroom units. One of the changes they mentioned, they said it's going to be smaller, but it's not clear from any of the other drawings or plans on this updated draft DA. Um, so in that summary, they say they're going to reduce the size, but then if you look on the actual figures, like the plans, it has things like typical size, and then they show this range, which is like from the old range down to the new range. So again, it's very it's non-committal. It's very unclear what is actually going to happen. But what is the same here? Four buildings, four phases, same height, 3 stories, 32 feet height. And still going to bulldoze the trees. It's the MBC. Okay, so in this last bullet, it's the same tree survey that was used for the original that was reviewed. They only identified 35 possible trees clusters, for possible preservation, and it actually does call for removal of invasive trees. And based on the survey, it's that's a lot. I mean, we're talking about 80% or more of this 9.5 acre. These next few slides, things I feel were kind of left unsaid, was left out of this draft EA. The drainage assessment they did shows it runoff uh, after the proposed development to be 70% over essentially 9.5 acres. Um, and they modeled current conditions at 40%. I thought that was a bit high. I mean, I would argue it's probably less than 10% normally, just because it's a forested area, that's actually very good at absorbing water. But even from 40 to 70 percent runoff, that's a 75% increase, in like runoff water volume. And for a site, this site gets 100 inches of rain. So 100 inches of rain, 9.5 over 9.5 acres, 100 inches of rain a year. We're talking about like 8 million additional gallons of just in this case, it'd be runoff, stormwater that needs to be managed per year. So in the draft DA, they proposed a potential detention system that they say could mitigate the flow rate of a 10-year design storm. So it's a modeled event, and this system kind of holds back some water, so it could control the rate at which it's draining. Just for reference, in 2004, Manoa was flooded badly. That was a 20-year storm event, and so that would have easily, overwhelmed this potential proposed system, which is only really being modeled after a 10-year, so a less smaller rain event. And sort of the flip side to this, so you're going to increase runoff to 70%. What that's doing is it's decreasing, the absorption. It's decreasing the amount of water that's allowed or given the chance to absorb back into the ground. The DEA states that where the site is, that it has groundwater utility. So water absorbed here can make it, and recharge our aquifers. So by increasing, more impervious surfaces, you're increasing the runoff. You're decreasing this freshwater recharge. So that I think that does have an impact, for our future drinking water. Some of the traffic issues that I saw just based on this new updated draft DA. So they had to do a traffic study this time, like an actual study with counting cars and whatnot. Um, but they didn't. The study it did not include that five-way stop. Um, the real major intersection in Manoa, and in their study area, which is more on the Woodlawn side, they have like 30% of the traffic in the study will leave kind of going up Laurie towards that intersection, and then they just kind of stop the study there. So, we're talking about 30% of the traffic is going to have to interact with that location, and it's kind of not addressed. So for the proposed project, they did trip generation, so they're kind of trying to estimate how many trips would be generated. And the way they did it, they weighted it. 70% is weighted on essentially extrapolating 1 day data collection on Manoa Gardens driveway. And I don't think that's enough data to extrapolate to say that is representative and that I can extrapolate or it can't be extrapolated. Third bullet, it's purely focused on EMP and peak traffic, which is whatever, but it totally ignores the daily, trip impact, like how many more trips per day. And so, I think not a complete picture, of the overall traffic impact. And they don't really talk locally about, where it's the proposed action is relatively far in the valley, and so, you know, on those streets that they're proposing these driveways, gonna double the number of cars. Like even with their numbers, AM, PM, whatever, it's gonna double the number of cars that need to use that street that the driveway is on. So I mean, at a local level, I feel that is a large impact. The third thing, I think they've kind of tried to gloss over what environmental potential significant impact. So actual name the significant impact. It says that if you conflict with state environmental policy, then that's an impact that needs an EIS. Okay, well, they claim they don't, but yet there is no reference to the law, HRS 344, which is the, the state's environmental policy law. There's no reference to that. And if you did reference that, there's a section here for 2D. It says, encourage match practices, conserve, protect forest open space areas. Okay, so I mean, this is marked on the urban planning development plan map. It's marked as open space, zoned P2 general preservation. So it is, right? It is an open space area. The law says we should have, we should conserve and protect it. And okay, so I was just hoping, please, it's not over. Please submit. This is the comment window on this DEA is open now until January 23rd. So please submit a comment. Again, at the bottom here, links to this slide deck, which could get you to these links. You can see there's another slide deck at this. Follow this link that has a little bit more details on the comments, how to make a comment, directly linked to the draft EA, so you could look it over yourself. I made a number of YouTube videos, kind of talking to different issues. So you can find it here. Manoa in the Dark was the name. You need the hyphens for that tag. Um, so yeah, thank you for listening. I'd like to open it up to questions if there are any.